Hi there. In this video segment, we're going to discuss about types of muscle contraction. Now, there are two types of muscle contraction: isotonic muscle contraction and isometric muscle contraction. Now, muscles are designed primarily for firing and contraction, so we can do all these movements and perform our activities of daily living. It doesn't matter what you do. Now, that's what muscles are designed for. So they help you to contract, you perform a movement, you accomplish a task. Now, it gets a little tricky to understand these different types because isotonic has two types of muscle contraction. One's called concentric, the other type is called eccentric. And then comes another type called isometric. So let's break down what's the difference between these types of muscle contraction and also how does it apply to our everyday activities of what we perform. Okay. Now, keep in mind that when you're studying anatomy, it's very easy to understand what these muscles do. So in plain words in anatomy, we read, for example, let's take the muscles of the arm. So you got a muscle at the front of the arm, it's called biceps brachii, and then you got muscle at the back of the arm called triceps brachii. Now, when you're studying anatomy, you're always taught that, oh, the biceps would flex your elbow and your triceps would extend your elbow, which is perfect. That's exactly what they do. But unfortunately, because we are subject to gravity, because of that, some of these muscles don't kick in unless you perform a motion against gravity. All right, so keep that in mind when we talk about these contractions. It's going to make a very important difference. Okay. All right, now let's do just one example for now. Okay, so let's say if I have a cup of coffee in my hand and if I want to bring that cup close to my mouth, you notice that I'm performing flexion, which is the biceps is helping. Now, once I finish drinking the coffee and I want to bring that coffee mug down, it's obvious to say because when I'm bringing it down, it looks like I'm performing extension of elbow. It's what it is, but unfortunately, the triceps cannot help. Okay, the same biceps which helped me to bring the coffee cup up, the same biceps is going to help me to bring that coffee cup down, right? So the triceps will not kick in. Now let's understand why that happened. That's why these contractions come in called concentric and eccentric. Okay, now let's talk about the types. As I mentioned, there are two types of contractions: isotonic and isometric. Okay, isotonic means movement is happening. Okay, there is some movement going on. The word isometric means no movement, it's static. Something is being held. So that's why it's called isometric. Okay. Now, isotonic, the one I said, which has movements involved, has two subtypes: concentric contraction and eccentric contraction. Once again, concentric and eccentric. Okay. Let's take this as an example first before I move to isometric. So the two types of contraction for isotonic, one is concentric, one is eccentric. Now, when I say concentric, the muscle is actually shortening. It's contracting and is shortening. When it's eccentric, the muscle is still developing tension, but it's lengthening. It's not contracting, it's lengthening while you're lowering a weight or you're lowering something down. Okay. Now, that's what most of the situation happens. Now, to explain that, what I've done, I've got this free weights dumbbells. So I'm going to demonstrate the action of biceps by using the free weights. For that, I'm going to come a little closer so you can actually see the muscles perform. So you can see here, my elbows are completely extended. So when I'm going to bring that weight up against gravity, and you can see my biceps has gone really, really small. And it's probably performed a concentric contraction, which is shortening of a muscle. Now, when I'm going to lower that weight, now you see what happens. This muscle, I can still feel, oh boy, that's a lot of tension there. But this time you can feel it's lengthening. You can see it's how it's all straightening out. It's lengthening and slowly helping me to lower the weight. If I touch my triceps, it is so soft. I don't feel any contraction happening there. That just prove that the weight came up with the help of biceps. The weight came down with the help of biceps. It came up with concentric, it came down with eccentric contraction. The same muscle helped me to lift and lower. Now you notice what I'm doing right now is isotonic. Isotonic concentric, isotonic eccentric. Okay, here we go. Now, that's the other type we talked about, isometric. So what is isometric? So, for example, when I'm lifting the weight, and when I don't move, when I hold the weight, you notice that the muscle is neither shortening or not lengthening, it's just holding that weight. This contraction is called isometric, where there is no shortening or lengthening, a lot of tension building up to hold the weight, which sometimes we need that for your everyday activities. Does that sound good? All right. So let's recap. Isotonic has two types, concentric and eccentric. Concentric movements always happens against gravity. Any movement going up is against gravity. Any movement going down is towards gravity. For example, if I use my wrist, if I lift my wrist up, the muscles of my forearm are performing concentric contraction. And I slowly lower the wrist, the same muscles on the top, they're lengthening and performing eccentric contraction. Okay? When I don't move, when I hold it still, like this arm is still, the muscles of my arm are performing isometric contraction, right? So this is what's needed in everyday activities. Now, for example, the same coffee mug example, when I'm bringing the coffee close to my mouth, my arm muscles are performing concentric. Once I bring it over here, I need to drink. You notice my elbow is not moving, my wrist is moving. So because my elbow is not moving, it's an isometric contraction. There's no movement. When I'm going to lower the cup, now this time it's eccentric contraction. So concentric, eccentric. When I don't move, isometric. So that's the principle behind the muscle contractions. Okay. Now another example related to some activities we can do every day. So I got a box here, which we're just going to bring it up. Let's assume this is a laundry basket. So let's say if I want to lift this laundry basket, I'm not worried about the legs at this point, just the arms. So when I want to lift the basket, you watch very carefully. The box is coming against gravity. So all the muscles of my forearm and arm, they're performing a concentric contraction. Watch one more time. I'm going to lift the box. This is concentric. Now I need to take the box to where my laundry is, for example. So I got to walk, walk, walk. You notice my arm, my forearm, arm, they're not moving. So now I'm performing isometric. So when I reach my destination, I'm going to lower the box. You notice my arm's now doing eccentric contraction. So once again, watch carefully. Concentric, eccentric. If I don't do a movement, if I hold it, this is isometric. I hope that's clear. All right, now this makes sense why your biceps is considered a little toned, more stronger when compared to triceps. The reason is most activities we do, we always take the elbow up and down, where the biceps does all the work. The triceps does not get much of an action because for these triceps to work, for example, the movement should go against gravity. Think about it. The action of triceps is extension of elbow. Think about in a day, when do you actually have your elbow go up and down this way? If you do this, now you notice my triceps is working concentric and eccentric. When I take it up, now it's concentric and eccentric. The biceps is so soft. I can't feel any action happening there. So this now movement is working on my triceps. But unfortunately, not many activities we do in a day where I got to take the arm up and down. This is why when people go to the gym, they're always working on the triceps up and down because you don't get to do this movement in an everyday activity. That's why it's important to keep the muscles balanced more stronger equally, not just the biceps. This makes sense why the gravity plays an important role. So when you're studying anatomy, it's okay to study, oh, biceps does flexion, triceps does extension. But when you're doing the activities, remember, depending on what muscle you're using, if a movement is going against gravity, that muscle is performing the motion. So once again, to recap, there are two types of muscle contraction. One of them is isotonic, where movement is involved, subdivided into two, concentric and eccentric. Concentric is a movement against gravity, muscle shortens, tension builds up. Eccentric is towards gravity, muscle lengthens, tension builds up. There we go. And there's the second part of movement, which is called isometric, which means you're holding a segment, you're not moving. The muscle is contracting. Rather than contracting, tension is building up. It's not lengthening, not shortening, but just holding a position. So this is an isometric contraction. Okay. Hopefully you found this video helpful to understand the two types of muscle contraction. Thank you.